and welcome to yet another program of the Office of Disaster Management, Disasters and You, right here on DBS Radio. I'm Carlisle JnoBaptiste, Communications Officer at the Office of Disaster Management. We are a bit late today, but we are here in studio, and I'm alone today. Sometimes, you have to improvise. And so we continue the program because we got to do what we got to do. And as you are aware, the Office of Disaster Management is the agency of government division responsible for coordinating disaster management activities on the island. As you are aware, also, this is achieved by readiness, response, and national plan implementation. And like you are aware also today, we have some weather system out there. And the Office of Disaster Management, we are liaising with the Met Office to ensure that all is in place. Readiness, response, and national plan implementation. Logistics support, example, the Ministry of Health, solid waste ongoing garbage disposal, liaising with supporting agencies, the Ministry of Education like we did today, the national, regional, and international, coordinating simulation exercises, providing public information and education. You're also aware that the Office of Disaster Management is the secretariat to the National Emergency Planning Organization, NEPO, which is a broad-based disaster management body under the direction of the Honorable Prime Minister, whose responsibilities are to ensure that the country is in a state of readiness, preparedness at all times. And I pause a bit because last week we were at the Dominica State College, and I want to say kudos to the Dominica State College students as they got ready for what we have shared with them. We have an exercise ongoing, and come the 10th of October, they will be doing some stuff there with us. And so we want to say to them, last week when we were there, we were very, very pleased with the turnout of the students of the Dominica State College. Now, you should be aware also that the Office of Disaster Management, in terms of collaboration with other agencies, that is departments and division heads, and or support disaster risk management programming to prevent loss of life and reduce damage to property given emergency disaster situations. Also, there's a strategy for combating these adverse situations. That is to continuously educate and inform the general public and emergency service agencies about disaster management issues. And like I said earlier on, like today, we have this severe adverse weather situation where you have a lot of people who are calling in and wanting to find out, hey, what is going on with the weather? What is happening in the country? Because, yes, we are seeing a lot of rain, etc., etc. So we were able to issue certain situations or certain bulletins. And earlier on today, there was a flood watch issued. And you know that a flood watch means that flooding is possible within the forecasted period. And currently, a tropical wave is generating light to moderate thunderstorms and gusty winds across the southern half of the island, with near 1 inch to 25 meters of rainfall observed in some areas. And the forecast, 1 to 2 inches of rainfall is likely. Flooding is possible in communities in the southern part of the island. So again, possible impacts, excessive runoffs, and river ravine flooding. So if you are in low-lying areas, you need to be aware of that. Flooding and pounding of low-lying bridges and the streets, increase stuff as it relates to streams and rivers, landslides and falling rocks in vulnerable areas. And that is why the flood watch was issued. Before that also there was the flood warning that was also issued. And it took effect from this month from 6 a.m. and it's valid until Tuesday, that is today, at 12 noon. So the flood warning is valid until 12 noon today. So those of you out there, be very, very, very careful, because the soil is already saturated, and lots of things when it comes to rain can happen, and we do not want anything happening to anyone. Again, the Office of Disaster Management continues to inform and educate the populace. This area has been significant. We have seen significant improvement in community engagements. We've done road shows, outreach programs, radio shows, and of course our social media platform. We continue to be there informing and educating the public. And generally the intention is to increase capacity and enhance products. The areas that needs improvement is testing, simulation exercises. Of course, the cost of staging an exercise is very exorbitant. But as usual, our intention is to have it at the table or at the tabletop level, desktop review, and then escalate to full scale. Again, we continue to collaborate and support and get support from partners in critical areas. And the Office of Disaster Management has been introducing these partners on the Disaster and You program. That is what I am on today, so that we can elaborate on the areas and expertise and how we support and contribute and add value to disaster risk reduction initiatives and programming on the island to save lives and reduce damage to property, ensuring a more resilient Dominica. And so also I want us to take a look at emergency kit. Again, we are in the hurricane season, and there's always this important emergency kit that you need to ensure that you have at your home. Important documents, insurance documents, your birth, marriage and baptismal certificates, immunization documents, travel documents, etc. with passports. Communication plan, which includes a list of all your important contacts, your family doctor and insurance agencies, your banking information, lease or mortgage, all those documents, you need to have them. These are very, very important documents. You need also your proof of occupancy, such as your utility bills. Ensure that all these documents are always kept in a safe place. Photo inventory of your personal belongings. It is also important to have waterproof container to store documents. If you have a young child, baby supplies, disposable diapers, formula, your food, medication, bottles and feeding utensils. And there are other necessities that you will need, like toolbox. Maybe if you have a fire extinguisher, you need to have that close on hand. A whistle, masking tape or duct tape, outdoor extension cords, spray paint. If you have a local phone book, have that on hand. It's very, very important. Also, a power bank. If you have a generator, ensure that that generator is in order and with diesel and oil or gasoline. This is very, very important. Your basic supplies, drinking water, manual can opener, non-perishable foods, canned meat, fish, fruits or vegetables. Those things are very, very important. Bread in moisture-proofed packaging, cookies, candies or dried fruits, canned soup or non-perishable milk, powdered or single-serve drinks, cereal, packaged ketchup, mustard or mayonnaise, peanut butter and jelly. And those of you who love your coffee, instant tea or coffee, of course, it is very, very essential that you have your flashlight always ready and raring to go. And it would be nice also that if you have a flashlight for each and every individual in the household, so at least when light goes, when Domlec takes the electricity, you have those lights and they are ready. Portable battery, powered lanterns, and large trash bags. You need lots of them, I must tell you. Of course, battery operated or solar powered radio, because you want to know what is happening around you. It's very, very important. to know what is happening around you. Because if you do not know what is happening around you, then you cannot take decisive action. That's very, very important. Also, you need extra battery for all battery-operated items. First aid kit, that is, including aspirin and antibiotic cream, mosquito repellents, waterproof matches. And yes, you need to have your cash. Ensure that your cash is in a safe area, because at that time, things are happening and you will go helter-skelter, wondering, where did I put this? Where did I put that? So you plan. And remember, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you fail to plan, always remember that. You plan to fail. So it's very, very important that you plan beforehand. That is why, again, I'm stressing, be prepared, be safe. The Office of Disaster Management, we have this emergency kit checklist for you. Rain and work gloves, extra eyeglasses or contact lenses. Those things are very, very important. Know your shelters. Some of you out there, you are not aware where your shelters are. It is important that you know where your shelters are. We are in the hurricane season, and I have with me a revised list of shelters, shelter managers and assistant shelter managers for 2025. And I will go through it. So we have the Point Michel Community Emergency Shelter, the Community Center. And the shelter manager there is Miss Dorel Edwards. Assistant shelter manager, Octavia Graham, Vanya Deluge, and Shaquille Charles. And the capacity for the shelter is 50 persons. In Soufriere, we've got the emergency shelter, Christian Union Church, Soufriere Village Council Building, and Soufriere Primary School. And we have Wifas Jules, Anne-Marie Del Sol, and Valina John Lewis, and the assistant shelter managers are Shemer Galloway, Jasmine Alexander, Anderson Williams, and Floydie Andrew. The Scott said community, we've got the old primary school, and we've got the shelter manager, Mr. Conrad Caesar, and his assistant is Sonny Boy Bellot. In Galion, the house of Gavin Xavier, and the shelter manager is Gavin Xavier. The house of Primrose John Kerr, the shelter manager is Primrose John Kerr. And the house of Laura Blanc, and the shelter manager is Laura Blanc. Girondel, we've got the emergency shelter, the consumer cooperative building, and the shelter manager is Virginia Girondel. The assistant shelter manager is Ruth Dorival. The community of Egliston, we've got the emergency shelter manager is, we've got the emergency shelter in Egliston Pavilion, and also we have the shelter manager is Desiree Lewis, and the other area is the Egliston Old Primary School with Jacinta Maroney as the shelter manager, and assistant shelter manager for the Egliston Pavilion, Randy Alexander, and the Egliston Old Primary School, we have Jessica Maroney and Ashworth Williams. We move to the community of Mont Prosper, emergency shelter. We've got the Mont Prosper Primary School with the shelter manager, Kiara Wilson, and we have the Kahal Yahweh Church with the Sima Mayers, and the assistant shelter manager is Cecilia Christmas. Wharton Waven, we've got the Wharton Waven Primary School, and the shelter manager is Jeffrey Charles. The assistant is Rudolph George. We come to the community of Newton Primary School, Eldona Donna Roach, And the assistant shelter manager is Melinda Sayers, Jermaine Desiree, and Sabria Oscar. The community of Trafalgar Community Center, and we've got Quincental Paul, and the assistant shelter manager, we've got Barbara Barry and Marcus Johnson. That shelter has a capacity of 150 persons. The Trafalgar Primary School, we've got Chanel Aliyah Shillingford, and the assistant is Miranda Baptiste and Danny Bethel, which has a capacity of 100 persons. Loader Old Government School, we've got Fabiana Mohiz, and assistant manager, we've got Bennett Mohiz. That shelter has a capacity of 100 persons. We move now to the community of Dublin. The emergency shelter is the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and the shelter manager is Ian St. Louis. The assistant is Jocelyn Deleuze and Cecilia Shillingford, along with Garrison Morancy. And the youth center with also Tamisha JnoBaptiste is the shelter manager in that community. We've got Biosh Nazarene Church. Pascal Hilton is the shelter manager, with Stephanie Hilton as the assistant shelter manager. The Fisheries Complex, with the shelter manager being Philippa Daniel, and assistant shelter manager Sandra Ezra Alexis. We move to the community of Salisbury. Emergency shelter, Salisbury. In Salisbury, the primary school, lower floor, Patrick St. Albert is your shelter manager. The Baptist Church downstairs, Derrickson Louis is your shelter manager. And along with Derrickson Louis, we've got Justine Stout. And with Mr. Patrick St. Albert, we've got Davis Shillingford and Myrtle Massicourt. The Salisbury Gospel Hall, we've got Rosette John Charles, and assistant is Simpson Vidal. And that area has a capacity of 40 persons. The Baptist Church downstairs, another 40, and the primary school, lower floor, 80 as capacity. In St. Joseph, emergency shelter, Caleb John Laura Primary School. The East Block 1, upper floor. Rosalind JnoBaptiste is a shelter manager, with Lisha Eugene as the assistant, a capacity of 120 persons. We've got the West Block, Ernest Louis, with Alex Alexander is the assistant, and Isaiah Thomas Secondary School, Randy Charles with Conrad Shillingford, the assistant. In Layu, the regional shelter is the emergency shelter, with Lazar Charles as the shelter manager, and assistant is Benica Riviere. We move to the community of Warner Primary School. We've got the shelter manager being Jasmine Abraham, with Joanne Morgan as the assistant. In Monrachet, your resource center is your emergency shelter, with Jocelyn JnoBaptiste as your shelter manager and Olivia Loda as the assistant shelter manager. We move to the community of Bells Primary School. Conley Esprit is the shelter manager, with Lydia Augustine the assistant shelter manager. The community of Jimmet, the regional shelter, is your your emergency shelter with Calvin Esprit as the shelter manager. He's assisted by Davidson John, Melissa Loda, and Daniela Polidor. And that area has a capacity of 500 persons. We now move to the community of Grand Fond. Emergency shelter, Grand Fond Primary School. Juanita Lawrence, that is, as your shelter manager, and that's in the Southeastern District. Assistant shelter manager, Danielle Coffee Ofa. 50 persons capacity. Grand Fond Apartment B Complex. Abby Lawrence is your shelter manager, with assistant being Birdie Phillip, a capacity of 25 persons. La Plaine, we've got the Cotier shelter with Florence Stedman as the shelter manager and Jacinta Durand as the shelter assistant manager. 20 persons capacity. The community of Bwetika Sewing House with Persia Senville as your shelter manager and Malone Smith as assistant shelter manager. A capacity of 15 persons. The community of Delis Primary School, Perline Saintville Etienne, shelter manager, and Joan Hillier Gist, assistant shelter manager, 30 persons capacity. Monjon, emergency shelter, primary school, cafeteria, Colonel Samuel as shelter manager, and Ethan Primer, assistant shelter manager, 35 persons as capacity. We now move to the Northeastern District, and we move to the community of Marigot. We're dealing with shelter, emergency shelters. You need to know where your emergency shelter is, who is your shelter manager, and who will be your assistant shelter manager. The community of Marigot, the council building, Claudia Alexander, shelter manager, Donna Boland, assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 40 persons. The Methodist Church, Joan Joseph, shelter manager, Kent Musgrave, assistant, 60 persons capacity. Church of Christ, you've got Charles Corbett, shelter manager, and Bernita Viville, assistant shelter manager, capacity 35 persons. Methodist Preschool, that's in Marigot, Samuel Hamlet, shelter manager, Arthur Telemack, assistant, capacity 30 persons. W.S. Stevens Primary School, Vanilla Moses, shelter manager, assisted by Claire Bedminster, Washington Linton, and Edmond Bonney. And that shelter has a capacity of 100 persons. Also, the Youth Skills Center in Marigot, we've got Hazel Walsh, shelter manager, and JnoBaptiste, assistant shelter manager, capacity 50 persons. The community of Concord, emergency shelter, Concord Primary School, shelter manager, Gabriella Serafin, assisted by Mariette Gordon, capacity 40 persons. Preschool near the primary school, a capacity of 20 persons. And I assume also Gabrielle Serafin will also be the shelter manager for that area, assisted by Mariette Gordon. We move to the community of Wesley. Emergency Shelter, Christian Union Church, Bertrand Telemac, and assisted by Laban Telemac, capacity 50 persons. Still in the community of Wesley, SDA Church, that is Andrew Shaw, who is your shelter manager, assisted by Edney Benjamin, a capacity of 40 persons. We now move to the community of Woodford Hill. Emergency Shelter, Baptist Church, Cindy Joseph, your shelter manager, with Julian Joseph, assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 33 persons. The primary school, Ursuline Benjamin, shelter manager, assisted by Clepton Telemac and Burham Fontaine, a capacity of 75 persons. The community now of Calibishi Resource Center, that is the Calibishi Resource Center, with your shelter manager being Glenda Jean-Pierre. She is assisted by Marcus Masley and Martina Lawrence, a capacity of 35 persons. We now move to the north of the island and to the community of Vacars. So we enter now the community of Vacars, dealing with your shelter manager, and your assistant shelter manager. So take note, the community of Vacars shelter, emergency shelter, is the resource center, lower floor. Again, I repeat, resource center, lower floor. Your shelter manager is Madisha LeBlanc, assisted by Lucy Benjamin. The Thibault Gomier, the house of May Honoré, shelter manager May Honoré. House of Bernardine Augustine, shelter manager Bernardine Augustine. And only 15 persons can be accommodated in that shelter. And the one before that is the resource center, lower floor, 10 persons can be accommodated. We now move to the community of Portsmouth and Glanville. Portsmouth Secondary School, Charlesworth Mills, shelter manager, with Kirosan Boyd as the assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 100 persons. In Gladville, the community center, we've got Solomon Jean-Paul as shelter manager, capacity 30 persons. Capuchin Resource Center, Emmanuel Auguste, that is Emmanuel Auguste as shelter manager, with Giles Carbon JnoBaptiste as assistant shelter manager, capacity 20 persons. The community of Clifton, the primary school, is your emergency shelter, with your shelter manager being Simeon Vital, a capacity of 35 persons. Cottage, the resource center, with Elton Daniel as your shelter manager and Brenton Mason as your assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 25 persons. Savon Pie, we've got the primary school in that community. That will be your shelter manager. That's in the community of Savon Pie, with Edlin Sablon as your shelter manager and Lucina Thomas as your assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 35 persons. We move now to the community of Penville, the primary school lower floor, Lynthia Joseph is the shelter manager and assisted by Cecilia George, JnoBaptiste Maslin, Edward Dubois, and Rosa Bartholomew. We have a capacity there of 25 persons in that area. Actually, I will go through that one again because the Penville, we have the primary school in Penville, so we go back to Penville. Penville Primary School, lower floor. Lynthia Joseph is your shelter manager, and Cecilia George, assistant shelter manager, a capacity of 40 persons, assisted by JnoBaptiste Maslin. Now, we also have the Seventh-day Adventist Church in that community with Julian Rouillet as the shelter manager, assisted by Edward Dubois. So Edward Dubois will be the assistant and a capacity of 25 persons. The Penville area again, Penville Resource Center, Frances Alexis is your shelter manager with Rosa Bartholomew as your assistant shelter manager. So just for further emphasis, I'll go back. I will go through the Penville again. Penville Shelter, Emergency Shelter, Penville Primary School, lower floor, Lynthia Joseph, assisted by Cecile George and JnoBaptiste Maslin, along with Edward Dubois. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, shelter manager Julian Rouillet, along with Edward Dubois, and the Penville lower area Resource Center Penville, Frances Alexis, assisted by Rosa Bartholomew. So that's for that community of Penville, lower Penville. We move now to Paybush. Paybush Primary School downstairs. Paybush Primary School downstairs. Nathalie Durand Ferrol, assisted by Mika Walter, a capacity of 25 persons. In the resource center, we have Adelia Toussaint with Irv Matthew assisting, capacity of 30 persons. Dodan, the primary school in Dodan, is your emergency shelter, and your shelter manager is Bennett Maslin. Bennett Maslin, and assisted by Classier Charles, along with Lena Christian. The community of Benz, emergency shelter, primary school, Benz lower floor. Primary school, Benz lower floor. Shelter manager, Gabriel Joseph, assisted by Clitson Dodds. 30 persons capacity. In the resource center downstairs, that's the resource center downstairs, Benz is upstairs, resource center upstairs. Again, Benz resource center upstairs. Cecil Joseph, your shelter manager, assisted by Goldlyn Stevens. En soldat, we have house of Josephine Charles, and Josephine Charles is your shelter manager, a capacity of 15 persons. We move now to the Southeastern District. Southeastern District, emergency shelter, Grand Bay. Now that's the Grand Bay area. Grand Bay Pierre Charles Secondary School. Your shelter manager is Rodney Lockhart, assisted by Anthony Thomas and Reggie Henry. Again, Grand Bay Community, Pierre Charles Secondary School, shelter manager Rodney Lockhart, assisted by Anthony Thomas and Reggie Henry, a capacity of 50 persons. The community center in Grand Bay, we are still in Grand Bay. Armour Thomas is your shelter manager. He's assisted by Cleo Litham, a capacity of 100 persons. Again, community center Grand Bay, that's in the southeastern district. Armour Thomas, shelter manager, assisted by Cleo Litham, 100 persons capacity. Grand Bay Youth Center, Davidson Charles, your shelter manager, with Denisa Cook, assistant shelter manager, capacity 40 persons. And the church, Martha Bruno is your shelter manager, assisted by Michael Riley, a capacity of 40 persons. We move now to the community of Tetmon. Tetmon Emergency Center, Community Resource Center. Tetmon Emergency Shelter, Community Resource Center. Shelter manager, Nickel Thomas. Nickel Thomas, your shelter manager, assisted by Titus Germain, a capacity of 30 persons. Bagatelle, the primary school, Sibyl Gist is your shelter manager, a capacity there of 40 persons. Baptist School, your shelter manager is Elvis Francis. Baptist School, your shelter manager is Elvis Francis, assisted by Nelia Fontaine, capacity of 30 persons. And finally, in that district, that is the southeastern district, in the community of Bellevue Chopin, we have emergency shelter, the community center, with Vanilla Maxime as your shelter manager, assisted by Dosha Ryan, assistant shelter manager. Capacity of 25 persons. So we hope and trust that you were able to grasp that sort of information. Know your shelter, know your shelter manager, know their locations, and remember, it is very, very essential that whenever the go-ahead is given, you do not wait for last minute. And also, it's important to note that when you move to the shelter, you only take essentials with you. So you have to find a place for your pet, because you cannot take your pet to the shelter. No animals. So you have to find a place for your cat and your dogs. Secure them. Secure them very, very early. And like I said earlier on, you must take the emergency, you must have an emergency kit. And I spoke earlier on about this emergency checklist, that it is very, very important that you need to have this emergency checklist with you. And I spoke about your emergency checklist earlier on. Some necessities you need, very, very essential. You need important documents. Important documents are very, very essential. And what are your important documents? Your birth or marriage, baptismal certificates, immunization documents, your travel documents, passports, etc. And you need to have a communication plan, including a list of all your important documents. So, again, if you have young adults with you, you need to give each of them some sort of responsibilities, because mommy and daddy cannot do it alone. They cannot remember all those things that they have to, hey, I have to look for the passport. Where's Tom's passport? Where's Jill's passport? Where's daddy's passport? You have to designate responsibilities. Those things are very, very essentials. And if you designate responsibilities, trust me, things are going to go as planned. And like I said, your banking information. Also, if you have babies with you, disposable diapers, formula, your food, your medication, people, your pressure tablets. If you need, you're diabetic, ensure that those things are there very, very early. You cannot wait for last minute to be rushing. Oh my God, I cannot find my pressure tablet. You need to have those things on hand early because it is emergency time. Other necessities, again, you may need a whistle, some spray paint, your telephone, your cell phone. Ensure that your cell phone is always properly charged. And you need to also have a power bank. It's very, very essential to have that. So if you do not have a power bank as of now, I suggest that you find one because you do not want to wait for last minute. Because if you wait for last minute, you know what's going to happen. Remember also, if you are in low-lying areas, when the go-ahead is given, you need to get yourself out of the low-lying areas because it's going to be very difficult, people, for the police who have to take care of security services on the island to try to take telephone calls in difficult circumstances to come trying to assist someone. The fire department also will have their work cut out for them. And in those difficult situations, we do not want to burden the fire officials and police officials because they have, again, to secure the island. So, ensure that if you are close to a river, low-lying areas, get out very early. If you are close to the ravine, people from Dublin, Point Michel, the ravines, where we have the Sibuli Ravine and the Lodbo Ravines. Whenever you hear those situations, ensure that you get out and you get out very, very early. We do not want to hear that we would have lost someone, the ravine would have gone down with someone. And again, also, for those people who are playing inquisitive, when those situations arises, it is essential that you stay out of harm's way. Don't go out and play devil's advocate and try to believe, well, you are Superman and go out there and take pictures. Well, you want to be the best photographer and send things out on social media. You want to be the first to post things. Ravine going down. I want to go out there and take pictures. Nah, that is not good. Stay out of harm's way, people. It is very, very, very essential that you do that. And as we get a wrap, we have just about 3 minutes left on our program. Time flies, eh? Imagine, time really, really flies. Remember always, around this time, we are in the hurricane season. Preparedness. Are you ready? When a hurricane watch is issued, you have 2 days, 48 hours before strong winds, rains, and rough seas are possible. Be prepared. If you are under a hurricane warning, you have a day and a half, that is 36 hours or less, before strong winds, rains, and rough seas begins. Take action. Now, what not to do and what you should do. So I'm going to tell you the things that you ought not to do. Do not wait to hear the category of the hurricane to prepare. Hurricane strength can move from category 1 to category 5, strongest in the shortest possible time. Do not wait until strong winds, rains, and rough seas. Begin to evacuate your family early. Do not mislead the public or place additional burden on local authorities by sharing fake news. This is just what I spoke about a short while ago. Going out there and spreading fake news. Do not do that. It is wrong. It is wrong. It is wrong. What you should do. Okay, I'm going to tell you what you should do. Practice early preparation to help reduce your anxiety. I'll repeat that again. Practice early preparation to help reduce your anxiety. That is what you should do. Evacuate early if told to do so. And get your information from the trusted authorities. I'll repeat again. Get your information from trusted authorities. We have the Met Office, as we always say. The Met Office is always available to give you proper and trusted information. Take heed of that. Do not go out there and just pick up information and spread it. No, no, no. You could also go for information on the Office of Disaster Management's website at www.odm.gov.dm/hazard. I'll go through that again. www.odm.gov, that's .gov.dm/hazard, that's HAZARD. We also have our Facebook page, and you can go on our Facebook page where you will catch all the latest information. The Met Office also has its Facebook page where those pages are being updated. So please, people, take note of that and go out there and get that necessary information. And so, on that note, I bid you farewell for today. Join me, the Communications Officer of the Office of Disaster Management, next week, Tuesday, for yet another interesting and informative program on disasters and you on DBS Radio. Until then, I'm Carlisle JnoBaptiste saying stay safe and goodbye.